All right, thanks for tuning back into Otter Limits. This is your host, Steve Long. We are bringing on a candidate for state legislature here in Oklahoma. His name is Scott Esk. He owns a small window cleaning and auto rescue business. He's a constitutionalist that has been active in Republican politics for many years, helping several solid conservatives get into public office. And now he's running for office himself. So here he is. Scott, are you there?
I'm here. How you doing,
All right.
Steve?
Thanks for coming on to the show with us tonight, Scott.
Thanks for inviting me. My pleasure.
All right. So you are running for, if I have it right, you're running for House District 91. Is that correct?
Yes, sir. It's in South Oklahoma City, from 89th to Indian Hills, and from Western Avenue to I-44, basically.
And who held that, or who is holding that office now? That's I can't remember his name.
Well, you were just talking about term limits. We're talking a term-limited Mike Reynolds.
Mike Reynolds, that's right. Okay. So I understand that you've been walking the neighborhood.
I've been doing that extensively through rain or shine, hot weather. We've had much cold weather since April. I've gone through it once. Early, I'm starting on the second round, and until the very end, there wasn't anybody else. There wasn't any evidence of anybody else walking. So apparently, I've gotten an early start.
I really wish. It seems to me that a lot fewer people do that now, and I wish more people would.
It's rewarding, I'm here to tell you.
Yeah.
People were glad to, nothing special about me, but just the message that I was able to bring them about nullification to be used in Oklahoma was very encouraging to people. A lot of people were very, very frustrated about all the federal government breathing down their necks, and they're ready for somebody with solutions to come help them in their plight.
So what have you been telling people about nullification as you've been walking around?
I've been, without going into a full-scale treatise, I've in my campaign literature, I mentioned that I highly recommend a book put out, I think 2006 or 4, called Nullification, and I forget what the title is. It says something about the 21st century, and it's by Thomas Woods, who has been, he's written quite a few New York Times bestsellers. Nullification was one of them, and he explains how states have, throughout our history, used nullification, which is simply refusing to enforce unconstitutional federal dictates. And they've done it successfully. They've shoved the federal government back in its constitutionally mandated cage. And we haven't done that for a while on any major scale, but the time is right now, I believe. People are ready for it. They're in the mood for it, so to speak.
I think more people are getting ready for it. And I believe that book that you're talking about, if anybody out there listening is interested in finding out about it, it's called Nullification: How to Resist Federal Tyranny in the 21st Century. And that is written,
familiar.
Yeah, and that is Thomas Woods Jr. So it's a good book. It's definitely worth checking out. So tell me, why did you decide to run for office yourself? You've been active in politics, get other people elected. Now why you?
I didn't see. I was about to say I didn't see anybody else who was going to do what I was setting out to do, and I still don't think. I think I will be the strongest person running who will be on board nullification. But basically, I've seen so many instances, and I've been the victim myself of an overreaching federal government and even some very out of control local bureaucrats. My patience with them has worn very thin. I want to do something about them and bring freedom back to my fellow Oklahomans. And there are many others who are interested in doing that, but I pretty much have the fever for it. I've been a constitutional activist and gained a lot of education about federalism, the proper role of government. I've attended many meetings and gotten the emails from OPAC, Oklahoma Conservative Political Action Committee, and I'm very much on board the message of freedom, and I think people are ready to hear it, and I want to help them get the freedom back. It's just I guess maybe a crusade with me.
Oh, good. So if you did get the job, if you were elected, what would be your number one priority, and how would you address it?
The biggest priority, and it's a broad thing, of course, getting the federal government to not have the influence it has in Oklahoma. We can't abolish any federal departments or fire any federal employees, but we can, as I said, and the book illustrates it very wonderfully, we can refuse to enforce things in Oklahoma. Probably the biggest job killer in Oklahoma is the EPA, the Environmental Protection Agency, which was ironically started by he probably considered himself a conservative Republican president, Richard Nixon, by decree. And that's one of the things that should have been nullified back then, and it wasn't, and we're all the much worse off for it. I see the EPA as a big job killer that if Oklahoma were to be able to nullify the edicts of the EPA, we have our own Department of Environmental Quality that even if there are arguments about it being beyond the role of state government, at least it's not blatantly unconstitutional like the federal EPA is. It is not. It's not within the realm of the 17 powers given to the federal government under Article 1, Section 8 of the Constitution, and all those powers are external. None of them get within states and make federal bureaucrats busybodies within states. But probably the EPA, the FDA is, I think, a major threat to us as well that needs to be cleared out of Oklahoma. And along with getting some of these very powerful and very unconstitutional, very brutal agencies curtailed in Oklahoma, I see the need to have law enforcement on board to be educated in nullification as well, particularly county sheriffs who are, as you probably know, I think it was in Wyoming where they were. There was a court ruling came down and said just affirmed what a lot of people already knew, that county sheriffs have more law enforcement authority in any given county than anybody else, including the President of the United States. So that if the sheriff is on board nullification and a federal bureaucrat comes by to enforce what we tell them not to, the county sheriff and then other law enforcement personnel can put him in jail, give him fines, whatever we in the legislature decide to put into the laws that nullify the bad laws coming out of Washington.
Yeah, a lot of people don't realize that the county sheriff has that kind of power. I found out, secondhand, I guess. I don't know. I found out pretty well what the powers of the sheriff were last year when I was the campaign manager for Darryl Sorrells, who unfortunately got beat by the incumbent, the machine.
Yeah,
there.
with the help of some Republicans, unfortunately, too.
Yeah. That's you're right. It's on a sad state of affairs. What about education? How would you propose in Oklahoma specifically we can fix it?
Well, Steve, I've long thought that it was the height of injustice for somebody who doesn't have children in the public schools. I've often referred to them as government schools. I think a lot of what's done in the schools is not in the interest of the public. So if anything, I might call them anti-public schools. They're good people in there, but just the way the machine is run, it's not in our best interest. But for somebody to be forced to pay for the education of somebody else's children when you don't have children in there, and I'm not just talking about homeschoolers and private schoolers, I'm talking about grandparents, whose children are grown up, those who didn't have children, those who don't have children yet. But all of them are being forced to prop up a failing system and making it look better than it is. And I think I'm not into sugarcoating. I never have been. As a candidate, I'm telling people in my literature that I'm for, at some point, privatizing the public schools and making them where those who don't have children in the schools don't pay anything for them, and that people will talk against that, but they can't argue with the justice of it. It's unjust to force people to do that.
Yeah, I mean, you're not going to get any argument from me here. I'm a libertarian, so the less government, the better. And I really think that education is one of the biggest failures that the federal government has gotten involved in. And so yeah, I'm all for privatizing.
Well, and I'm not, I don't walk away from shock value statements. Some would say that education is so important that government has to be over it. I would argue the opposite. Education is too important for the government to be over it. And if we were to get to a point where we privatize education in Oklahoma, I can guarantee you this, sir, we will be the envy of the rest of the nation with our education. Hands down.
Oh yeah. Again, you'll get no argument from me. I think education is far more important to our future to allow like you said, to allow the government to get involved. And there's a lot of things I would say that about. But you're right. Education is definitely very important.
Well, and with the Common Core curriculum now that has created a lot of stir among people have basically made that go viral about the harm that will be done by the Common Core curriculum, which is another government program, a federal government program that will be fraught with failure, just like the No Child Left Behind and all the other attempts for the federal government to inject themselves into education, again, unconstitutionally, have been. And this is a pretty good time to probably be talking about getting first the federal government out of education and then getting the state out and letting education be run by the free market and see all the innovation. Steve, I've been to the OCHEC, Oklahoma Christian Home Educators Consociation, their homeschool shows at the Myriad.
Yeah.
And there's just so much. It's an overwhelming choice of materials there, and nobody's making anybody put out the materials. It's all free market supplied curricula, and
right.
It's just, if you ever go there, you'll see what innovation is there for people that are just going there to offer something good that their competitors don't have. It's
right.
the wonderful unseen hand of the free market, and
The biggest
education stifles
now
that,
or
government stifles that.
I was saying the biggest competitor right now for them being the federal government themselves. But yeah, I actually did a show a few weeks ago where the main topic was education reform, and I had Linda Murphy on with me. So if you get a chance, you should check out the podcast of that. There's definitely a lot of interesting information that I got out of Linda there. But I'm going to go ahead and move on. What are your thoughts, if any, on Oklahoma's ballot access laws?
I believe competition is always a good thing, whether it's ballot access or getting, Walmart to have to compete against Target and Sears and JCPenney and all. If we're stuck with just two parties to try to represent everybody, it's not going to be a very good representation. I don't care what you try to do. And ballot access used to be a whole lot better in Oklahoma than it is now. There was a time, I think until, the late 70s, when we only had to have 5,000 signatures statewide for an alternative third-party presidential candidate to get on the ballot in Oklahoma. Yeah. I believe we had the most lenient ballot access law then out of any of the states that surrounded us, that touched us. And now we have a system that's very convoluted, and it's next to impossible to have anybody but a Democrat, Republican on the ticket. I'm a Republican, and I've been a Republican for a long time, but I have no problem whatsoever with somebody else competing. If I were running for this office and there were a Libertarian and Constitution Party candidate and Green Party candidate running against me, no problem whatsoever. That's our right to have that kind of choice, I think, and it's wrong for the legislature to vote against that with the draconian law that replaced the lenient law from the 70s.
Yeah, I mean we have Oklahoma has probably some of the most restrictive ballot access laws in the country, and I would have to. You may not know this, but you are probably a person in the minority as far as in the Republican Party of those who are not opposed to loosening the restrictions on ballot access here in Oklahoma. Most Republicans would disagree with you because they want to keep that power.
Maybe so. Well, and the biggest argument made against having third parties, especially in a presidential election, is that some people will say that they only serve to be spoilers. In other words, a conservative third party like the Libertarians or the Constitution Party may cause a Republican to lose to a liberal Democrat. Well, that's not the fault of the Constitution Party, Libertarian, anybody else. That's the fault. That could be just the way people decided. But there's another thing that third parties do that people don't give them credit for, and that is they make those in the mainstream parties, the Democrats and Republicans, have to rethink their positions if they're going to win.
Yeah.
If they have a weak candidate that doesn't believe in liberty, and he goes ahead and runs, and he loses to the Democrat because somebody else had a more appealing message, but he was in the Republican Party, whose fault is that? I'd say that's the fault of the Republicans who settled for somebody who didn't really believe in liberty.
I would agree. And, as much as the Republican Party likes to say that they're all for limited government and freedom and liberty, it seems like they're kind of going the opposite direction lately. They're becoming, if we know, for lack of a better way to put it, they're becoming more statist.
I'm sorry, more what?
Statist, authoritarian.
Yes. Yeah, I agree. Had the bipartisan vote on the Patriot Act that trashed the Fourth Amendment, and just the thought that we have all these federal departments that didn't used to exist, and the Republicans, Democrats both are keeping them and not really raising much fuss about their existence. The things like the EPA and FDA are very draconian, and virtually nobody nobody short of somebody like a Ron Paul or somebody like that will not ever talk against them, and that's discouraging. We need to get back to talking about liberty, and we've failed.
You brought up that dreaded Patriot Act. I tell you, I've said this on the show before, I'm pretty sure, but that's a sensitive spot with me. I essentially consider anybody that voted for or supported that act a traitor to their country. So, yeah, I'm not a big fan.
It was the opposite thing to do to deal with terrorism. That's for sure. We didn't need to take away Fourth Amendment rights from American citizens. That's not the way to deal with that. Agreed.
Let's see if I had any other questions for you. Specifically related, of course, to Oklahoma here, because this is where you're running for office. What are your thoughts on whether or not Oklahoma should allow medical marijuana?
I don't have any problem with that. The doctor-patient relationship should be as free from government interference as possible. As with anything else, if a physician prescribes something that hurts the patient, I've always thought that the courts have been equipped to deal with malpractice. We have an unconstitutional federal war on drugs, and I agree we have some pretty potent drugs that people take that do harm them. But the federal government absolutely is in no position to take any part in that. But on a state level, those things that a physician would wish to prescribe, as long as he's properly credentialed to do it, he should be allowed to prescribe it. And if there are any problems with that harming the patient has the right to sue him.
Right, exactly. So would you say that you are not a proponent of the federal drug war?
Not at all. It's I think it's been very counterproductive and a waste of money. Any dealing with drugs needs to be done on a state and local basis. They need to be cleaned out. Federal government has been the most active player in the so-called drug war.
Oh yeah.
It's no better than there's no need for them to have ever gotten into that. We'd be better off without the war on drugs, I think.
Yeah. So what would you say is, if any, really, the proper role of the federal government? What are they there for?
Need to look at my Article 1, Section 8 again, but for equipping the military, providing for their training and discipline. It says establishing post offices and post office roads. That was in the beginning.
Right.
You know, as far as you were talking about the war on drugs, the federal government does have the right to or the power to grant copyrights and what was the other patents for people's inventions, so they can exclusively profit from them. I'm missing some things, but those are all, you know, powers for the general welfare. None of them interfere with states. States
Right.
need to be sovereign. It comes back to that for me. My part of my motto is sovereignty for Oklahoma. And then, yeah, the federal government, what they are saddled with in the Constitution, they need to do that faithfully. You know, one of the things they're commanded to do is to provide for the protection of our borders. There's provision for providing rules for citizenship in the United States, and with that, I believe is entailed, you know, protection of our borders through whatever means can be brought forth. And those that are not American citizens don't have the same rights as American citizens.
Right.
And what's happened there, they've grossly failed at their job, and now Oklahoma, along with many other states, has a big influx of illegal aliens that are a big tax drain. They take a lot more taxes than they give to the economy, and that's the result of federal government failure. You know, they need to concentrate on their 17 powers that they're given and leave the rest up to the states and the people, and I think we'll see a whole lot better results.
Right. So here we've got a federal government that can't do the job that the Constitution specifically says they should be doing, and yet everybody wants them to help educate our children. I don't know.
Right. Right. And I would, gently correct you there. They will not do it. Not that they cannot do it. They've just made up their minds not to, because that's not part of their agenda to protect our borders.
Yeah, and that's really scary. I've got one last thing I wanted to ask you. I've been reading in the news a lot about this call. Our own Congress, or our own Senator, Tom Coburn, among some others, a very well-respected radio talk show host out there, has recommended that we should have a constitutional convention. What do you think about that? I'm a little. I think it's a little dangerous, personally, but I could be wrong.
It got to the point where we were being told that on July 4th of this year in Dallas, there would be a constitutional convention. I forget the name of the organization that promised it would happen. Fortunately, they were wrong, and it did not happen. And I think either Sean Hannity or Bill O'Reilly
Mark
is
Levin
talking that way. And Mark Levin, I've heard about him. He wrote a book about it. Long and short of it, and we had a state senator who offered a constitutional convention along with the state representative in the last session or two. The problem with, just getting to the heart of this, it's a good intention to want to roll back federal debt. It's a good intention to want to put a lid on spending, and those are some of the things that people talk about when they talk about a constitutional convention or an amendment to the Constitution. Mm-hmm. Article 5 gives us two means to put on amendments to the Constitution. One is the route we've always used, and we've had, 27 amendments?
Yeah.
Through that process. I mean, the first 10 were before that,
Right.
but then the 11th through the 27th were through the means that has been tried. The other means with the Constitutional Convention was tried once in our country, and that was before the Constitution. And people don't realize that, but that was an example of a runaway Constitutional Convention, where the goal was to amend the Articles of Confederation. What ended up happening at that convention, where that was clearly laid out, was that I think James Madison and others took it a different direction, and it became a runaway convention. They created a new document, a very fine document at the time, but that's our precedent for a constitutional convention. The one time it happened, it was a runaway convention.
Yeah.
And if we're interested in getting spending under control, I would even argue against amendments to the Constitution, because if congressmen are already ignoring the body of the Constitution,
Exactly.
where it gives them 17 duties, and they're doing 17,000 instead of 17, what's going to make them pay attention to an amendment?
Well, these people, I don't think they realize at the core, the problem isn't with the Constitution. It doesn't need to be amended. It needs to be enforced.
Amen, brother. Yes, that's true. and that's what nullification is for. You come back to the nullification argument.
Yeah, there's nothing wrong with the Constitution. The problem is with those who have sworn an oath to defend something that they have no, basically they're lying. You know, they've taken this oath and they know they're not going to uphold it. They know they're not going to defend it.
Right. Or they may think they are defending it. They may actually think they are going by the Constitution.
Then they need to go relearn.
But we know better. Yes.
I mean,
go ahead.
Go ahead.
With nullification, it was understood that the states called the shots, and the states determined whether or not Congress was acting constitutionally, or the president or the federal courts were acting constitutionally. It was never a matter in early days of entrusting those questions to the federal courts. It's a little bit like asking the playground bully who's shake people upside down by their legs and getting their milk money out of them, if he's being fair to his fellow children on the playground. He's going to always say he needs the money more than they do. But if we get back to the states examining those questions, we'll see that they're going to find things much more unconstitutional than the federal courts will, and there's a reason for that, because they haven't had their common sense trained out of them in law school.
Well, with people getting with important people, and I use that term loosely, important people like Mark Levin and Rush Limbaugh and Hannity, and then senators like Tom Coburn, people that are quote unquote respected in the political community. With them getting behind the idea of a constitutional convention, I think it's time to worry.
Well, it's time to oppose them and give a principled opposition to that, and explain what happens in a constitutional convention. The only one we've known was runaway, and why have an amendment that's also going to be ignored?
Yeah,
it's probably the best thing we can do. Inform the electorate and hope that sanity prevails.
It's not my intentions that of the people that want the Constitutional Convention that worry me. What worries me is, just like you said, the only one we've had was a runaway, and we ended up with a completely different document. It's really kind of disturbing.
Yes, sir.
Well, Scott,
I agree.
Do you have any final thoughts that you want to leave with my listeners?
Well, just if anybody out there would like to contribute to my campaign. The campaign is called the Committee Clamoring for ESK, and we're trying to get a website up and a Facebook page for the campaign, and get to making yard signs and such. And I, don't like to brag about myself, but just I'm pretty proud of the effort, having got through the district already once, and it's just a breath of fresh air in this stifling summer atmosphere here to see people so excited about freedom returning to Oklahoma. It's larger than the candidate. It's a movement, and we see some legislators already in there that get it, that get the liberty message, and I think it's something that's going to build upon itself and get some more of us grassroots folks in there. You'll see a much brighter future for Oklahoma with God's help.
All right. Well, I do understand also that you're looking for a campaign manager, so if there's anybody out there that is looking for that type of experience, you might want to get in contact with them. How would we get in contact with you, Scott?
Yeah, my personal email is scottesk, that's SCOTTESK, @Juno, spelled JUNO.com.
Okay. And then once you get your Facebook and your website page up, let me know, and I will let my listeners know when that was up and ready.
Okay. I appreciate that, Steve.
But in any case, Scott, thanks for coming on the show. It was good to have you, and we'll have to have you on again closer to the election.
Yes, sir. Thank you for being such a gracious host.
All right. Well, take care of yourself, Scott.
Good night, sir.
All right, folks, that was Scott Esk. He's running for House District 90. All right, thanks for tuning back into Otter Limits Radio. This is your host, Steve Long, here in Edmond, Oklahoma. We just got finished talking to Scott Esk. He is running for Oklahoma State Legislature in House District 91. And he is, he's going to be running for the seat that is being vacated by Mike Reynolds. Mike was term limited, and Scott is ready to take over his district. So I think we'll be keeping our eye on Scott and seeing how his race is going.